The controversy over Rahul Gandhi's disqualification is mounting on both the legal and the political front. I am Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo story. The Congress and other opposition parties have rallied in support of Rahul Gandhi and against his disqualification as a member of parliament after conviction in a defamation case. These images you're seeing on your screen are for parliament today, where several Congress leaders, including Sonia Gandhi, wore black bands, black kurtas, black shirts to parliament in protest. Meanwhile, the Congress's dharna at Rajghat, or rather outside Rajghat, continues, where fiery speeches are being made that are talking about the weakening and even, as some banners say, the death of democracy. Beyond the rhetoric, what are the real options of the Congress? Could this be a unifying moment for the opposition? The opposition, most of them, have spoken in support of Rahul Gandhi, but can this galvanize them into some sort of united front, or will the opposition remain splintered? And will Priyanka Gandhi, who's been leading, in a sense, the charge in support of her brother, step in case Rahul Gandhi's constituency, Wayanad, is declared open for a bypoll? To talk about this and a lot more, let's go across to Congress Member of Parliament, Shashi Tharoor. Let's bring him up on the screen now. There he is. He's joining us, in fact, from Kerala today. It's good to see you as ever. Shashi, obviously, you're going to criticize what's happened, but I think the important question is to ask you and your party mates why you hold the BJP responsible. This decision, after all, did come from a court, and the point has been made by the BJP that this is not the first time that Rahul Gandhi has made such faux pas. In fact, there are close to a dozen defamation cases against him across India. Go ahead, Shashi.
Well, look, I mean, as far as this particular thing is concerned, we felt that this was no accident. As the Soviet Union used to say, it is no accident, comrade, that these things happen the way they did. You have a case filed about a statement made in 2019. In 2021, the judge, the magistrate in Surat who's hearing the case, makes a slightly adverse comment saying he doesn't think there's very much in this case. The petitioner himself then rushes to the High Court and actually gets a stay of his own petition, which is almost unprecedented. He went and got a stay there. Then for 2 years, nothing happened. Rahul Gandhi made his famously expunged speech in Parliament, and the next thing you knew was that this gentleman rushes back to the High Court. The judge has been changed in Surat, and he withdraws the stay of petition, brings his petition back. It's heard in record time. Within 1 month, not only is it concluded, but Rahul Gandhi is given the maximum possible sentence for a criminal defamation case, which in turn is the minimum necessary to disqualify an MP. Look, I mean, none of us was born yesterday. You can add all this up and a very clear pattern emerges, and that's precisely what most of the opposition parties see in what's happened. I don't think anyone sees this as a simple matter of the law taking its course, as our friends in the BJP would like us to think.
In that case, what next? Questions have been raised as to whether the Congress and the Congress's legal team was too complacent. Why did you wait for the disqualification to happen? Why was there not an immediate appeal filed on the day that this judgment came? Do you believe the Congress was taking it too easy, perhaps?
Look, I think that you mustn't forget that there was a 30-day suspension of sentence announced on Thursday afternoon. I don't think that anybody in the Congress had any reason to believe that on a Friday, and that too within less than 24 hours of the court judgment, the Lok Sabha Secretariat would act so expeditiously to bring this disqualification into place. I think almost certainly, I'm assuming that the lawyers had every intention of moving the High Court today, or if not today, latest tomorrow. But it seems to me that they wanted to consult, first of all, on the legal aspects and then get political direction from the party before filing. That's my guess. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not part of the legal team. But it seems to me that to blame the Congress lawyers for something happening in record time at both ends is not particularly fair, because the honest truth is that all of us were stunned. I was on a plane to Thiruvananthapuram because the party had asked me to address a function here on Saturday morning when this happened. And, it was an afternoon flight. So I'm quite taken aback that such things could be done in this sort of record time.
You had a tweet out that suggested that, in a way, Mr. Gandhi's comments that he made about the state of Indian democracy in London, comments that he's got enormous amount of flack from the BJP, among others, for, have been vindicated by what's happened. Let's first start by the fact that he made those comments outside of India. The argument has been made that those comments have not gained him anything; they've only played to his disadvantage. When you tweet saying, "Hey, they actually proved Rahul right," are you adding more grist to the ruling party and its supporters' mill?
No, I'm pointing out to the BJP that this is a particularly egregious self-goal, because you have a prime minister who, in the midst of the G20, is advertising India as the mother of democracy, a phrase that is also plastered across Delhi in various posters. And here you have an action which has been reported worldwide as an assault on democracy. How does it help the BJP's efforts to project India in a certain way in the context of the G20? It clearly doesn't. The truth is that, let's put aside Rahul Gandhi and the Congress for a minute, Barkha. Let's just ask a simple question. Is it healthy for democracy in any country for the principal opposition leader, or even a principal opposition leader, to have his voice silenced, to be carted off to jail for 2 years, and to be denied the right to speak in parliament? What does that say about the state of the democracy in a country in which that happens? And I'm actually appealing here not just to the true blue supporters of the Congress or the admirers of Rahul Gandhi, just ordinary concerned citizens watching your show. What do you think, folks? Is this good for democracy in principle? There will be some other opposition leaders, some other opposition party. The principle remains the same. You want, in a democracy, everyone to have their say on a level playing field. We don't have that anymore, and that's something that, it seems to me, the world is looking at with dismay, is reporting it widely, and that's going to cost India and India's image as a democracy around the world.
When you say this is an egregious self goal by the BJP, do you begin by locating the blame at the door of the Surat court that delivered this judgment? Do you lay the blame at the Speaker's Secretariat in Parliament? Or do you question the Election Commission, as people like Abhishek Singhvi have done, saying that, everyone needs to hang on. We needed more time. That's only obvious. Let's also remind you and everybody else that Rahul Gandhi, had he not infamously criticized and lashed out at an ordinance that his government tried to bring in a few years ago, would have been protected by that ordinance that allowed for 3 months to a convicted member of parliament to try and gain time for him or herself.
Yeah, but I don't think Rahul Gandhi is backing off from his stand on that ordinance. I think he felt that it was wrong morally, and he sticks by that position, as I understand it. As far as he's concerned, whoever attracts, but we all assume that we're talking about far more serious crimes than the crime, within quotes, of one remark in a larger speech that wasn't even about this. The speech was mainly about unemployment and price rise and economic issues, right? And what's happening is that suddenly you find people saying, "Oh, well, if you hadn't torn up the ordinance, you wouldn't be going to jail." Well, I don't think he sees it that way. He says the principle is a principle. And though it's been applied in a case where perhaps it doesn't deserve to be applied, that's not his particular beef with it. But coming back to your earlier part of your question, I mean, you're looking at a situation, Barkha, in which the government has, I'm going to try and be careful here, has foregone an opportunity to correct the perception we all have that it is they who are behind this. The opportunity they had is when the Surat court issued the maximum punishment. They could have pleaded, or they could have asked their attorney, their lawyer, their attorney general to go and plead before the court not to give the maximum sentence, pointing out that the effect of doing so would be to cripple Indian democracy at the very outset.
Is that realistic? Are you not being naive there? Like, which political party appeals for their political opponent?
Oh, I think it would have made them look very magnanimous. Certainly, if I were in the BJP, that's what I would have suggested to them. Look larger. I'm sure you've got a large heart and a large mind. But that's, of course, not the way our government thinks. We have a sort of take no prisoners, bare knuckles kind of politics these days, coming out of the BJP at all quarters. And I just think that, it's a far cry from the traditions of civility and mutual respect amongst government and opposition that have traditionally animated our politics. I mean, we all remember Vajpayee Sahab talking about Nehru with such undisguised admiration, and Nehru telling this young man who was tearing a strip off him, one day you'll be prime minister. We all remember Vajpayee's admiration for Indira Gandhi during the 71 war, and his talking about how Rajiv Gandhi had deliberately included him in a delegation to the UN when he desperately needed some medical treatment that wasn't available in India. And he came back cured at taxpayers' expense, he adds, because of the magnanimity of a political rival. So these are the kinds of traditions that our politics used to be known for. We've fallen a long way from there to this kind of bitterness, rancor, and sharpness of language that we're seeing all the time.
The BJP has argued that the disqualification is an automatic byproduct of the conviction that they haven't actually done anything proactively to do this. So unless you're questioning the independence of the court that delivered the judgment.
Conviction is very, very rare. In fact, people are trying to do desperate research to find another case where somebody for criminal defamation has actually been given a 2-year sentence. There are very, very few cases, if at all. And so the normal course would have been a fine, possibly a reprimand, possibly a short prison term to serve, as an exemplary caution, whatever. But to give the maximum punishment for one statement, which in any case is highly contestably been interpreted, because there's no doubt that the case of the petitioner is very weak. Rahul Gandhi said in his speech, "In sabke naam mein," and when he said "in sabke," he was talking about these three: Nirav Modi, Lalit Modi, Narendra Modi. In sabke naam pe Modi kyun hai? Now, you can well say that that was a specific attempt to target three specific Modis and had nothing to do with the Modis as a general surname. Nowhere was he saying, and nowhere did he say, that all Modis are thieves. So I think this is a case that stands a very good chance on the merits of succeeding on appeal. But the truth still is, it's one sentence wrenched out of context that lends itself to two possible interpretations, and yet you have the maximum possible punishment. There's something there that doesn't smell right.
You know that the political point being made by the BJP is that this is a smear of the OBC community, that you basically lashed out at a surname, at a caste name, at a caste group.
But listen, I mean, this is absurd, preposterous, because as you know, there's nothing remotely backward about either Lalit Modi or Nirav Modi, who neither of whom, by the way, is an OBC. I think Lalit Modi is a Marwadi, Nirav Modi is a Jain. There are Modis who are Parsis, there are Modis who are Muslim. I mean, there's not just one community that uses the name Modi, number one. And number two, the fact is that if you're living in the lap of luxury in London, as these two of the three people named by Rahul Gandhi are, you can hardly shelter behind the claim of backwardness. I mean, the only thing backward about them appears to be their moral standards. So I would appeal to you that kind of claim should be treated with the disdain it deserves. This has nothing to do with OBCs, nothing to do with the backward classes. This is about two rich fat cats who have taken fugitive status with their ill-gotten gains in a foreign country, neither of whom came from an underprivileged background or has ever lived an underprivileged life. And to use them as embodiments of the backward classes, frankly, the BJP is insulting the OBC community by doing that.
When you say it's about two rich fat cats and not about the OBC community, you're omitting very cleverly to talk about the third person who is in fact an OBC, which is India's Prime Minister, Narendra Modi. And do you believe, looking back, Rahul Gandhi made a political snafu by targeting the Prime Minister directly? When he tried sort of Rafale in the previous election, it didn't work. Now the Congress is trying very hard to talk about Adani. You've tried in both cases to link this to the Prime Minister. You can call Lalit and Nirav two rich fat cats. You can't say that about the Prime Minister.
Look, I think that the Congress party is making a political point that you are talking about a government that seems to have close relations with some crony capitalists, in whose case some irregularities are being alleged, and Rahul Gandhi as an opposition leader is exercising his right to ask certain questions, which is part of the exercise in a democratic opposition of holding the government accountable. In other democracies, the government would simply answer these questions and dismiss them. But you don't answer a set of questions, A, by refusing to answer them, B, by refusing to admit even statements of this nature. As you know, Rahul Gandhi's speech on the subject was expunged from the parliamentary record. And then see, by trying to get him expelled from parliament and even thrown in jail. That's not a democratic response. I remember a speech the Prime Minister made in 2015 or 16 talking about how important it was in a democracy for the government to be questioned, for the government to be challenged. He said, "Hamare sare kaam kaaj mein prashn uthane chahiye." This is the only way we can work in a democracy. And he's right. But when it's happening, seems to be the response. And that's very, very worrying.
What would you have the BJP do instead right now?
I've just told you. I think the BJP should, instead of gloating
you want the BJP. You want the BJP to go to court to appeal in favor of Rahul Gandhi. Come on, Shashi.
No, now the appeal. I'm referring to the sentencing stages. They could have done it then. Now the appeal is something we will do. Obviously, the person who's been found guilty is the one who's going to appeal because he's not guilty. That's a different matter. But I was just saying that one thing they could have done is to appeal for the. Secondly, instead of gloating over his conviction, they could take the other line saying, of course, they don't like Rahul Gandhi. They don't like what he's saying. That's fine. They can say that, and then they can add, however, in our democracy, we don't want to be accused of in any way condoning the absence of an opponent. So we're willing to join an appeal. And if you want the government to express a view before the High Court, our view will be that we want this conviction to be stayed and a proper hearing held, so the MP can return to Parliament and raise his voice. I mean, something along those lines would actually send a very good signal abroad as well, because abroad, this has not played well in the slightest. It's played extremely badly. The coverage has been unanimously negative for what's happened in India, and no one is making very fine distinctions between the court and the government. It is seen as part of a vendetta against the opposition, and that's not any of us saying it abroad. It's foreign newspapers and media.
Should it matter what they're saying abroad? Should it matter?
Well, apparently, if you want to be a Vishwaguru and you want to advertise to the rest of the countries in the world that you come from the mother of democracy, you can't really, no mother treats her child in this manner. I don't think that you want to be, held up as an example of the opposite.
Let's talk about what happens next. You have spoken about how maybe, just maybe, this is going to be an inflection point for the opposition to come together. But before any of that could happen, we've seen cracks appear between your party and the Shiv Sena Uddhav Thackeray faction over what Rahul Gandhi said about Veer Savarkar at his press conference, right? Why would he need to say that?
Well, that's something only he can answer. But let me stress that the alliance with the Shiv Sena in the NVA in Maharashtra holds on a number of key issues, including hostility to the BJP's politics. When the Shiv Sena joined us, they did not give up their ideology of Hindutva, and we did not give up our opposition to Hindutva. It was just part of the understanding that we would collaborate and cooperate on other issues. In effect, like the UPA having a common minimum program, we had a common minimum understanding. But we didn't expect them to give up their ideology, and they shouldn't expect us to give up ours. Now, whether it's politic to mention it now or not later, I think Rahul Gandhi was only mentioning it in the context of the call for an apology. An apology is something which unfortunately, Mr. Savarkar is famous and notorious for having issued to the British, not once but many times. And therefore, he just wanted to say that as far as he was concerned, he was not going to apologize in that manner. That was the message. Now, I understand this has needled the Shiv Sena. I'm sorry they feel that way. But it wasn't in any way a denunciation of Savarkar's nationalist credentials before the apology or anything else. It's simply quite that we are different parties, different points of view, certainly different views about Mr. Savarkar. And on this issue, we'll just have to respectfully agree to disagree and move on. The other things that keep us together in Maharashtra are still there. And let me add that there are parties which, unlike the Shiv Sena, are not allied to us, have never been allied to us in the last 5 years, who have come out in support of
you mean Arvind Kejriwal and KCR
Mamata
and
Banerjee and KCR and Pinarayi Vijayan in Kerala. All of them have spoken very strongly about the fact that this is an attack on Indian democracy, and they stand with the Congress on this.
Okay, now
You know,
you make this whole thing about the quality or the state of India's freedoms. At Rahul Gandhi's press conference on the same issue, he gets into this sort of sniping response at a journalist, where he basically accuses the journalist of being a representative of the BJP. This journalist has covered, as it turns out, the Congress beat for 15 years. The Mumbai Press Club is among the organizations that has criticized this. And there's a comment from Rahul Gandhi, "Ab aapki hawa nikal gayi," in the context of tough questions not being asked of the government and only being kept for the Congress party. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is one, it kind of, if you're trying to make a point about freedom, democracy, and those values, you can't be seen to be sort of diminishing those values in any way yourself. Point one. Point two, needlessly sort of taking away from the core messaging that your party is trying to do at that time. How do you address the criticism that has come from large sections of the media about how Rahul Gandhi spoke to that particular journalist?
look, I mean, I have to tell you, I was at a satyagraha in Thiruvananthapuram when that was happening. I just had to watch it much later on video, so I can't really speak to you with any first-person authority on that. And I'm if you're implying that not everything our side says is perfect, sure, let's accept that and let's move ahead. I mean, the fact is not that we are claiming perfection. We're just saying let's focus on the big picture here, which is the assault on democracy.
Yes, but when you're talking about democracy, yes, it's a good thing that Mr. Gandhi has open press conferences, but then he has to be able to take the tough questions that come his way. Let's talk a little bit about what happens if there's a bypoll declared. We don't know if that's what's going to.
But just on that slightly gratuitous comment, let me add, how many press conferences the Prime Minister held and how many tough questions has he answered?
That is why I said it's very good that Rahul Gandhi holds those press
Let's not
conferences.
have double standards on this. I think, whatever his failings may be in your eyes, the bulk of what he's done shows a willingness to be accountable to the press in a way that we really desire our own government and Prime Minister would be accountable both to the press and to the opposition.
Okay, I know I have just a couple of minutes left with you, so I want to talk in the end about what might happen politically next. You've spoken
Yeah.
about an opposition, a sort of, a kind of realignment, maybe, we don't know. What happens if there's a bypoll declared in Wayanad, the state, your home state, Kerala? There's some speculation that Priyanka Gandhi Vadra may step in. There's been a lot of focus on her comments. Not everyone has, sort of agreed with her referencing Lord Ram and the Pandavas to talk about dynasty. But I want your thoughts on that. Like, what happens if there's a bypoll? If you were Rahul Gandhi, you've told us what you would do if you were the BJP. If you were Rahul Gandhi, would you just court arrest? Would you appeal this judgment? Would you tell your sister, step in for me? What would you do?
I would appeal the judgment. Remember, we have a very recent case. That's Mohammad Faisal, the NCP MP from Lakshadweep. He was convicted of a much more serious charge of attempted murder and was immediately disqualified from the Lok Sabha. He appealed and won a stay of conviction from the High Court. And as a result, the bypoll that the Election Commission had called was scrapped before it took place. And I hope that something like that will happen and your question will remain in the realms of theory. The people of Wayanad have elected Rahul Gandhi to represent them. I believe they have a right to be represented by him because they voted for him. And I think that their democratic right to have a representative of that caliber and quality should not be taken away from them. If obviously he fails in the High Court and then has to go to the Supreme Court, there might be a situation where it will not leave us enough time when the by-election is called. But that's something we'll have to worry about later. I think one step at a time, and right now the focus is Wayanad needs its MP restored to it, and the appeal should give us exactly the sort of situation we have with Mohammad Faisal, where the High Court gives a stay of conviction pending the hearing of the appeal.
Did you agree with the references to the Mahabharata and the Ramayana in Priyanka's speech? I asked you this particularly as the author of, Why I'm a Hindu. Did you agree with those references?
Barkha, as I told you, I'm in Thiruvananthapuram and I have a very heavy program myself. I've only heard a few excerpts from Priyanka Gandhi's speech and they didn't feature either of those references. What I heard was very effective and very impactful. And I think she's a fine and commanding speaker with a lot of passion and conviction. If she made references that you consider inappropriate, I'll try and go back and hear them. But we're just in a situation where I'm out of the loop on that.
Okay, very quickly, do you believe what's happened, as unfair as you think, the disqualification is? Do you believe that this is an advantage for the Congress or a setback? How do you see it?
I think it's both, Barkha, to be honest. I think it is a setback because we don't want our leader being barred from parliament. Certainly, we don't want him spending 2 years in jail. So I think both of those grounds, it is a setback. But there is a silver lining, and that is in the unprecedented level of opposition unity that has emerged, which may actually turn out to be another aspect of this law of unintended consequences. I mentioned the BJP's own goal vis-a-vis the outside world, but even within the Indian domestic political space, they may have scored an own goal, because you may find that as far as the opposition parties are concerned, their hesitations about each other may dissolve as they realize that if we don't stand together, this sort of thing could happen to others as well. And I think all of this will make a big difference, because the BJP won last time with 37% of the vote. In other words, a substantial majority, 63%, were with the opposition parties. It went 36 ways. There are 36 parties represented in parliament. But I will say that if instead of 36 ways, we can cut down the number of situations in which we undercut each other, we might be able to do far better in 2024. So all of this could turn out to be the positive side of the cloud and the silver lining, but the cloud is still there.
Okay, Shashi, thank you so much for talking to us. The Chinese used to say we live in interesting times, and that would have to be the massive and the most sort of biggest understatement for the times we are currently witnessing. But either way, they keep both politicians and journalists busy. Thank you. We know you have a flight to catch, so we let you go. Thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you, Barkha. All the best.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.